So Simon, why did you pick this video in particular to talk about today?
Because it's got penises in it.
Oh man, you're going to fit right in on this channel. Henry VIII was an English king best remembered by his subjects being a honking fat ass who spent the majority of his reign ploughing a series of increasingly hot wives in an attempt to sire an heir. At the time he lived, though, he was perhaps better known for walking around with an iron-plated penis.
Did they get increasingly hot, his wives? You said they're the increasingly hot wives, but I don't know, in the movies and stuff, I thought Anne Boleyn is always the hot one.
I don't know, I just used that because it sounded funny to write down. Maybe our researchers could do this. I do some research myself, but if the editor would like to put a picture of his wives in order of when he married them, and I guess the audience at home, you can judge, was I correct in my assumptions? I just thought that's a funny way to word it. Because he did spend the majority of his reign just getting married over and over again in a desperate attempt to have a daughter. Right, is it his son he wanted?
Yeah, definitely.
And he couldn't do it?
Because then he's got to have the because that's how it works, right? You pass on to the oldest son to make him the next king. And
he just couldn't.
It just wasn't working out for him.
And he spent so much of his reign just repeatedly getting married that I need to get a son. And then for some reason he blamed it on his wives.
He had daughters, right?
Yes. I'm sure there'll be a fact bar below about the children that he did sire, but he was legitimately blaming his wives.
I mean, this is all well and good, but this is to do with a 2.5 pound codpiece, right? I looked at the title. I definitely want to hear about that. What's with codpieces?
Well, Codpieces, they're mostly known as being quite funny today because they do look hilarious. And I'm hoping as I say this, some pictures of Codpieces will be behind me. And my favourite one is if you go on the Wikipedia page for Codpiece, one of the pictures showcasing what a codpiece is a portrait a guy commissioned of him stood with his dog staring at his own codpiece. And I just want to know, if I could be a fly on the wall at a point in history, that's definitely somewhere I'd want to go to see how that portrait got commissioned. So you stood there, yes. I mean, your dog, your faithful companion by your side, yes. And what should the dog be doing? Staring directly at my penis.
Yeah, it's like, no. Move its head up just a little bit so the mouth is just a little bit closer to your cock.
These aren't random, candid photos. This was an actual portrait he had to pose for. And that's what he decided upon. It's great, I love it. Reminds me a lot. Have you ever seen those portraits that farmers would have done of their big rectangular cows and sheep?
Oh, yeah. There was a phase where this was how they were painted, right?
If people don't know what we're talking about, there'll be some examples behind me. These large, trapezoidal cows and farm animals, where the whole point was farmers wanted to show off their wealth and status. So what they would do is have portraits commissioned in which their animals were the biggest, buffiest you've ever seen. But they were just these completely unrealistically large, square cows. I look at pictures like that and I think, how could people be this stupid? I remember when I was a kid, I genuinely thought that tunas were very, very small fish because tuna came in small cans. And it wasn't until years later that I found tunas are 10 foot long. They're the size of dolphins, which is why dolphins get caught in their nets. Holy shit.
I really only found this out when I must have been a teenager and I was on holiday in France with my parents. And in France they have those big fish counters, bigger than we get in the UK, where they have giant fish and stuff.
Yeah, they just have the sad snapper.
Yeah, but it's in France, they'll have a swordfish and a tuna. And I said to my dad, what's that? And he's like, that's a tuna. I'm like, no.
But if you're only used to certain cuts of meat, maybe you think the animal it comes from is just that cut of meat, just bigger, maybe.
I had an embarrassing one the other day. I thought that a red herring, you say a red herring. We did a video on this. I really thought.
Oh, do you make videos, Simon?
I do make some videos. I'm sorry, Karl. I get my plugs in at the end. I really thought for the whole time it was a red heron. So in my mind, I was always thinking of red herons, which is not correct.
There's loads of stuff like that, though. And I'm sure that we'll cover that another day. But first, we need to talk about these codpieces. So before we move on, for anyone wondering what the purpose of a codpiece is, they were invented many years ago when men didn't really wear trousers, or I guess pants for the Americans watching, and they instead wore breeches, which were just big stockings for men, which had a very unfortunate gap at the top, right where the wang was. So it became customary, if not downright essential, for men to cover or conceal that area with a custom-designed piece of clothing, later known as a codpiece. However, it soon became quite the go-to fashion accessory for men who wanted to accentuate or otherwise show off their penile region. So all men, really.
I don't get it though. Why would you make these breeches and stockings, but they wouldn't cover your crotch? It feels, when I'm getting, dressed, that's the only bit that's really double covered.
Yeah, like men would wear underwear, so underwear were a thing, and then you'd wear your breeches, and then sometimes they'd be stitched together at the top, like haphazardly, but most of the time they weren't, and I think it's more pronounced in things like suits of armour. If you ever see like suits of armour where like the greaves go up to the top, then there's nothing protecting the actual bit you'd want protecting. It's one of those quirks of clothing where it just wasn't on people's mind, even though it's the most obvious thing, for someone with looking back on history. And it's stuff like I think you mentioned it in the video, haven't you? Like the T-shirt. I think I wrote that one where people didn't invent, they didn't know what a T-shirt was, or they never thought of it as like a garment they could wear.
Until like the mid 20th century, right? It was just something that people wore as an undershirt, and they were like, oh, we could just not wear our shirts on top of this, and thus the T-shirt.
And then you have jeans, which were, I think some guy just sewed some canvas together for trousers, because he went, well, every piece of clothing I wear just gets torn apart immediately. The only thing that I own that isn't being destroyed are my canvas on my my wagon. Maybe I should make my clothes out of that. And that's how jeans were invented.
All right, so, we're talking about codpieces. This is to do with Henry VIII's codpiece. Was his, super awesome or something? Because he's, the big chief, or what?
Yeah, he was a fan of codpieces, to say the least, and obviously using his wealth, status, and influence. He had many, many codpieces designed, which were, they range from, remarkably intricate to just offensively large, I think some would say. And there are many, many portraits. Again, I'm hoping some examples of which are behind me. But it's arguable that the collective crown jewels of the Henry VIII's codpiece collection were the codpieces featured on his many suits of armour.
Yeah, I saw a video, and it was just the camera was zooming around one of his suits of armour, and it looks like there's just an absolutely, just unrealistically massive bulge on his suit of armour that. Also, it looks like it's so large, it looks like surely it gets in the way.
Yeah, it could be used as a defensive or offensive weapon if the situation required it. And the thing I love about that video is it was released by the Royal Armouries. So, it's a super prestigious organisation, and they've tried very hard not to highlight the codpiece. Yeah. Because they know that's too lowbrow for them. So they just show this really classy, tasteful, just panoramic shot of the armour. And they try very hard not to show the codpiece, but then it scrolls up or down. I forget which way it goes up, but then you see the codpiece just loom into frame like a Star Destroyer in Star Wars.
The suit sort of spins around, and you get this momentary glimpse of it just in profile poking out, and I was like, no, I gotta pause the video on that.
And I think to this day, the most popular exhibit in the Royal Armouries is a suit of King Henry VIII's armour, purely because nobody believes how big the codpiece is. And that was a feature present on every piece of armour he had made.
It is bizarrely huge.
To the point where it's comical. It is comically large. We cannot overstate how insanely huge this codpiece is. And as people have probably guessed, it was done on purpose, and the rumour is that King Henry VIII did it to quell the rampant rumours about his virility and or lack thereof in regards to his complete failure to sire a suitable heir. And that to me, what a way to do it. What a way to address that rumour.
You're not really very fertile. Oh yeah, well check out my massive penis covering.
Yeah, oh man, and the thing as well, he'd wear that to tournaments. I feel so sorry for the poor horse he had to ride. Imagine, 'cause obviously King Henry didn't put his own armour on. Someone else had to do that for him, which was seen as being quite a prestigious position, because obviously the direct contact you have with the king. But never before has that statement been more literal. You are imagine the guy who's got to do it on two men carrying it over. Is it the Atlas stones they do in World's Strongest Man?
Oh, I don't know.
Do you know those huge big boulders that they get World's Strongest Men have to put onto a big plinth? That's what I'm imagining how they attach the codpiece to his armour as the final piece.
The super obvious question here is, it's got to do with virility and stuff, but is the idea that he's basically making a statement that he's got a massive penis? Or
yeah.
Okay.
It's both.
We're having a good laugh about this, and
We are.
I mean, in like 2020 or like any time we've been alive, looking at these dudes with their like penis coverings essentially and huge penis coverings. Did people not realize the absurdity of this back in the day?
I think it wasn't so much as absurd as it was just like a curiosity back then. Because during Henry VIII's time, obviously, he did it to quell those rumours, and it was a very obvious and ostentatious just like act of showing off. But it's noted that even like in the 18th century, people were notably more prudish than they are today. Because obviously today we can laugh at this. In the 18th century, ladies of especially high standing were said to go to where King Henry VIII's armour was on display and then use pins to poke the fabric covering underneath, which is unfortunately since then just like eroded away. And
why?
They would poke it because it was under the belief that it would increase their chances of like getting pregnant. And while it's true that Henry VIII basically failed on all counts to get women pregnant the way he felt they should get pregnant, the fact that centuries after he died, women thought his penis was so potent it could help them get pregnant from beyond the grave. His attempts to prove that were pretty successful. Okay, so Simon, I'm hoping people have recognised your dulcet tones by now, but for anyone who hasn't, would you like to introduce yourself to the lovely people at home?
Yeah, I'm Simon. I also am a YouTuber. I have a few different channels.
You have a lot of channels.
I realize
so
saying this,
many.
I'm terrible at plugs. Yeah.
But every time I watch like a Today I Found Out video, you are plugging another channel that you run. Like, do you even have a list of like the total amount of things that you do on YouTube?
I think if you go to my website, just simonwhistler.com, which is just one of those, about me pages, because I don't know.
Okay, you got a website.
Yeah, well, a website is literally a redirect to a free About Me page.
That's awesome.
I should really get set up with a proper website. And that does have a list, probably out of date, because I just launched a couple of new channels like in the last 6 months. So
that's like the fact that you can't even remember and have to direct people to an out-of-date website that has like less information than is currently available. She said, "How do you do it?" So I thought about launching a secondary Fact Fiend channel, and then I realised I have to work so much more.
It's definitely more work having more channels. But to answer the question you didn't ask, I don't really know why I do it. Maybe I just hate myself.
Okay, fair enough. Well, that's true of most creative people, so that makes sense. That answer speaks to me and resonates on a level that cuts too deep to talk about in a comedy video. But I think it's me and you, we have like a professional relationship going back a few years, but I think it's like the second time we've ever talked properly.
The first time we ever talked was when I've got a podcast that I do called The Brain Food Show. And
yeah, go on, plug it, do it.
Yeah, there we go. See, look at
in.
that, slick. I think it was like the first or second episode at the beginning. I mean, it's a show about facts these days, but back in the beginning, we were thought, yeah, let's interview people as well, which was a bit of a random decision. But you came on. This must have been like, I don't know. It was just as your channel was starting to take off, I think, and we just had a chat about that. And then since then, you've become massive, and it's been super nice to watch.
Not King Henry VIII massive, but I'm trying.
No, you'll get there with time, Smallwood.
The weird thing is though that people don't seem to realise that we even if we don't know each other personally that well, we have worked on the same stuff for years. I think I got a tweet the other day from someone. So I was watching it Today I Found Out video, and Simon's calling you out.
Oh yeah, no, I saw that as well. Someone trying to stir something up, I'm actively, being mean to you by calling you unintelligible. You just replied, yeah, we know each other.
And if you scroll to the end of the video, it's like, I wrote that article. I didn't put that line in though. So I think that might have been added by Davin. Maybe he's trying to stir something up. You might have heard that sweet YouTube drama gets all the clicks and stuff. But yeah, I found that really amusing. It's a strange one, but I'm hoping that people enjoyed this brief crossover episode. I'm hoping Simon wants to do it again.
I would love that. Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for thinking of me and inviting me on.
Yeah, no problem.